The purpose of this video is to give you two examples to help you understand how to use trig to find an angle in a right triangle. The first step to finding the angle in a right triangle using trigonometry is to label the triangle. Here's our reference angle. The two sides of the reference angle are the hypotenuse and the adjacent, and the remaining side is the opposite. The next step is to identify the correct trig ratio. In this problem, we have a 16 on the side that's the opposite and a 19 on the side that's the hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse requires the trig ratio sine. So on this problem, we will be using sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. The third step is to write the equation. So on this problem, our equation will be the sine of x, because that's where the angle usually goes, but we don't know what the angle is. We just have a question mark there, equals the opposite side, which is 16, over the hypotenuse, which is 19. And that is our equation. On the fourth step, we need to solve the equation. So because I'm using the variable x, what that means is I'm going to get x by itself in the equation, and that equation will look like this. I divide both sides by sine, and I end up with the inverse sine equals, or the inverse sine of 16 over 19. That is our equation in a form where we can say that we have solved for the variable. Now we need to use our calculator to find the measure of the angle. Now we need to use our calculator to find the measure of the angle, and in yellow you can see all of the keys that you need to press to put the equation x equals the inverse sine of 16 over 19 into your calculator. You hit shift and then sine. That will put the inverse sine on the screen. Then you hit the fraction button. In the numerator, you type in 16. Then you hit the down arrow to get yourself to the denominator. Then you type in 19. Then you hit the right arrow to get yourself out of the denominator. And then you close the parenthesis by hitting the right parenthesis key and press equals. And it will tell you that your answer is x equals 57.3631025. And once we've done that, we've completed this step right here. We've used the calculator to find the measure of the angle. And most problems in our textbook ask you to round the angles off to the nearest tenths place. So on our problem, we have 57.3, and 0.3, that's the tenths place, and the 6 is able to bump the 3 up to a 4. So on this problem, the angle is 57.4 degrees. And that's our final step to finding an angle by using trigonometry. Here's one more example. First, we need to label the triangle. There's our reference angle, the angle that we're looking for. The two sides of the reference angle are the hypotenuse and the adjacent. The remaining side is the opposite. On this problem, you can see that we have adjacent, that side is 26, hypotenuse, that side is 45, and the trig ratio, which uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse, is cosine. So we've labeled the triangle, and we've identified that in this problem, we're going to use cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Now we need to write the equation. So our equation will be cosine of the angle, but the angle is the variable on this problem, equals the adjacent, which is 26, over the hypotenuse, which is 45. And so step number 3 was to write the equation. We just wrote the equation. Now we need to solve the equation, so we want to get the x by itself. So we divide both sides by cosine, and that leaves us with x equals the inverse cosine of 26 over 45. And so now we can say that we have solved the equation. So we need to get our calculator and we need to put in the equation into our calculator so that we can find out what the actual measure of the angle is. So now you can see on the screen in yellow is the series of keys that you have to press to put this into your calculator. You have to press shift, then cosine. That will get you to the inverse cosine on your screen. Hit the fraction button, put 26 in the numerator, hit the down arrow to get yourself to the denominator, put 45 in the denominator, hit the right arrow to get you out of the denominator, close the parentheses by hitting the right parenthesis button, and then press the equal sign. And on the screen it should say 54.70560532. And that is the measure of the angle. So in our second to last step, we just use the calculator to find the measure of the angle. Finally, we need to round off to the nearest tenths place. So we have 54.7. The next number after the 7 is a 0, which will not change our answer. It will not round it up. So for our problem, the measure of our missing angle is 54.7 degrees. And that finishes our problem because we've just rounded it to the nearest tenths place. So before you start the homework, one thing, make sure your calculator is in degree mode. If your calculator is not in degree mode, remember press shift, then setup, then choice number 3, and that will tell your calculator that you're measuring angles in degrees. The other thing is, on the assignment, make sure you read the directions. Make sure that you carefully put the answers in. Many students are just rushing in an attempt to try to get done. And even though they might think that they know how to do the problems, they're entering a lot of incorrect answers and getting low scores on the assignments. I think this is very clear. Just follow the steps, use scratch paper, use your calculator, and you'll be able to find the right answer on every problem.